A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots, said Marcus Garvey. While he focused on heritage and identity, that broader truth points to how any form of knowledge, whether cultural, historical, or contemporary, becomes the foundation for genuine confidence. When you're rooted in real understanding, fear of being ostracized loses its power. Many of us say, knowledge is the key to confidence. But how does that actually work? People often read books, learn facts, yet still feel anxious about sharing what they've discovered. They worry about backlash from peers who might label them as misinformed or even subversive. Beneath that anxiety lies a fear of being kicked out of the group. That fear keeps some people from investigating deeper truths in the first place. Take the moment when you realize that most people, your coworkers, your community, maybe even your family, have a certain concept flip-flopped. Maybe they're following outdated assumptions or simply believing something that was taught to them without question. You start uncovering the reality behind it and see how far the general consensus drifts from what's actually happening. At first you feel uneasy. It's unnerving to think, if I speak up, they might say I'm crazy, or they might cast me out altogether. But once you move toward uncovering the truth, a mental shift begins. The more you grasp about why a particular reality is hidden or distorted, the less intimidating the pushback becomes. Suddenly you see that many people are just stuck with secondhand knowledge. You recognize they've been misled, so their judgments lose a lot of weight. You feel sympathy instead of fear. That's the pivot. What used to scare you, ostracization, turns into a mild concern because you now know the difference between those who are genuinely informed and those who are merely repeating a narrative. Confidence rises when you accept that you're standing on something real. Imagine the difference between building a house on shaky sand versus solid ground. If the foundation is questionable, every gust of criticism or doubt rattles you. But if you've done the work, read multiple sources, weighed contradictory perspectives, reasoned things out for yourself, then that fear of what others think slides further down on your worry list. It doesn't evaporate altogether, but it becomes a footnote rather than a headline in your mind. A key aspect is awareness of how institutions, or operators, as some call them, manipulate social fears. They rely on outdated systems that can't keep pace with a more informed population. When they fail to maintain a certain narrative, they resort to sowing fear about losing one's place in a group. People cling to belonging, so the threat of exclusion can be powerful. But once you see through it, once you realize the fear was largely manufactured, that alone boosts your confidence. You come to understand that real knowledge gives you a vantage point where judgment from the uninformed no longer stings the same way. Some worry that knowledge might turn you arrogant. Yet genuine understanding typically does the opposite. It shows you how many people are simply stuck in illusions. Instead of feeling superior, you feel a sense of obligation to share insights. You might not always succeed, and people can still reject what you say. But your intention shifts from, I must protect myself from being shunned, to, I'll do my best to help them see what I've found, knowing they might still reject it. That's a leadership stance. It's less about ego, more about guiding others. Confidence, then, isn't bravado. It's not about puffing out your chest while ignoring your own doubts. True confidence is tied directly to an accumulation of facts or truths you've tested yourself. When you're certain about how a system functions, whether it's economic, social, or even a close-knit family dynamic, you're harder to rattle. Someone might say, how dare you challenge our tradition or our worldview? But if you're certain of your evidence, that accusation has little sway. Absolute knowledge is rarely absolute in the sense of cosmic infallibility. It means you've done the real work, multiple sources, different angles, and a refusal to settle for superficial answers. As Marcus Garvey's quote implies, this doesn't just apply to cultural awareness, it applies to any situation where understanding your roots, your basis, or your context is essential. If you don't know why something is the way it is, you're like a tree without roots, easily toppled by shifting winds of opinion. This process also reveals how manipulated knowledge fosters fake confidence. You see it in people who act overly certain but crumble under the slightest scrutiny because their views were never properly vetted. They're more invested in appearing confident than in establishing a truthful foundation. In that environment, a reverse psychology approach is often used. Teach people partial information, then gaslight them into thinking they know everything. That keeps them docile. If they get curious and try to push for deeper truths, the system threatens them with marginalization. Overcoming that trap calls for persistent research and a willingness to question official narratives. It might be about politics, economics, health, or any domain that shapes daily life. And it isn't just about reading an article or two. It means going down multiple avenues, sometimes even speaking with people from opposing viewpoints. The payoff is real knowledge that can't be easily unsettled by groupthink. Once you reach that level of clarity, you see how the fear of "what will they think" was inflated to keep you in the dark. Breaking through doesn't eliminate conflict. You can still face tension or social backlash, but it changes how you process it. Instead of freezing up, you respond with calm resilience. You might even pivot to a mission of enlightening others, understanding they may initially resist because they haven't seen the deeper truth you've discovered. Confidence grows further when you start practicing what you've learned. Reading about how an economic system works is one thing. Applying it to your personal finances or business ventures cements your knowledge. Observing the results fosters more confidence, which then encourages you to keep learning. It becomes a cycle. Knowledge leads to application. Application confirms or refines that knowledge, and each success or revelation further solidifies your sense of certainty. There's a saying, the more you learn, the more you realize what you don't know. That remains valid. But ironically, it's that humility that strengthens your confidence. You're not blindly asserting anything. You're operating from an evolving foundation, ready to update your understanding when new data arrives. That posture stands in stark contrast to the superficial confidence so many display, an inflated certainty that shatters the moment a tough question arises. Humanity as a whole has invested substantial time and energy in keeping people from real knowledge because an informed population is harder to control. Nonetheless, as individuals gather true insight, whether about money, politics, culture, or their personal identities, they naturally become more confident. They walk differently, speak differently, and care less about judgments from those clinging to illusions. Bringing it back to Marcus Garvey, a tree with no roots can't stand for long. Similarly, a person lacking solid knowledge can't maintain genuine confidence once pressured. The solution is to develop roots by understanding how things actually work, not just how they appear. That includes learning the background of the systems around you, financial systems, cultural narratives, family dynamics, and so on. When you know their past and how they came to be, your footing is firmer. In the end, confidence emerges from aligning yourself with verifiable truths. If your stance is grounded in actual evidence, if you've done the homework, negative comments from those who never dared question the status quo feel less threatening. Over time, you become the sort of person who can say, "I get that you disagree, but here's why I'm certain of my position." You might still be proven wrong in some details later. Nobody is omniscient. But you'll handle that correction with composure because your priority is truth, not winning a popularity contest. That's where knowledge and confidence meet. As you become informed, you transcend many of the petty fears that plague those operating on half-truths. You stand rooted, unafraid of a little wind. And if the wind comes in the form of people saying, "We don't like what you're saying," you can calmly reply, "I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to speak what I've discovered to be real." That is how absolute knowledge, or as close to absolute as we can get, translates into genuine, unshakable confidence.